Mercedes finally blinked. Both George and Kimi have been confirmed for 2026. But only for 2026. I'll have plenty of cinnamon of cynicism to sprinkle over this bad boy. And what's wild is this. That for the first time in as long as I can remember, Mercedes have no driver locked in beyond a regulation reset. Every season since 2013, they've gone into a new rule cycle with at least one long-term anchor. That being, of course, Lewis Hamilton throughout the turbo hybrid days. Then there was George Russell being seen as the long-term bastion during the ground effect era. But now, going into 2026, on paper, George and Antonelli were meant to be the long-term prospects, but what we've got right now is like, I don't know. It's not really looking much of a dead cert, and it's really not screaming confidence to me. It looks like confidence. We're meant to be thinking it's confidence on Toto and Mercedes' part, but it seems like the only confidence that they have is that next year's driver market is going to be absolutely bonkers. And Toto is basically signaling to any elite driver who might wish to move to another team, saying, don't you worry, come and get it. I can easily put any of you in my car. Now, of course, most of the major F1 news outlets are saying that, well, in reality, it looks like one of those 1+1 jobbies for at least Russell. For Antonelli, it might be a little bit longer, since Toto does have plans for the young Italian Verstappen. But the fact is, though, is that this is all being discussed outside of the Mercedes wheelhouse, using paddock gossip, overwhelming consensus between every single different journalistic outlet. It's not being announced, trumpeted by the likes of, well, that very team. And it doesn't necessarily mean that Russell's on the back foot or anything. He just knows that he's very much going to have to think about what's going on next year. He can't sit pretty, even if maybe he ends up winning the World Drivers' Championship next year. Who knows? The initial reaction, though, is relief. Both drivers are locked in a way, and the box is ticked. It's that, hey, oh, well, that's good. Oh, wait, not multi-year? That's the kind of feeling I'm getting, because lately, every renewal has flaunted a multi-year badge. Sometimes it's a sense of occasion, like with Fernando Alonso, when he teased that he was here to stay by copying the exact aesthetic of Sebastian Vettel's retirement announcement, and even going, my name is Fernando Alonso, and I'm here to stay. Gotcha. And that's the thing. Sometimes they play with it. Sometimes, like Williams with Albon, they copy the here to stay motif. There is a really strong assertion from the team that this guy's with us and he's here for a good long while. How long for? None of your beeswax. But it would be enough for people to just go, oh, okay, they're with them, that's that then. With Mercedes, I'm not getting that. It really does seem to me that only next year is for definite. And then the year after that, well, that's Toto of 2026 to deal with. I mean, it can be up to 2 years, hypothetically. That counts as a multi-year deal, right? But does it really, though? Considering the names that could be available come the middle of next season during the summer break. And that could reflect on the notions that we've heard recently, that George had backed down a little bit from the long-term deal that he originally wanted, supposedly a 3-year one, and maybe that this 1+1 guarantee is that it could be worth £30 million a year. That would mean he'd be the third highest paid driver on the grid, ahead of both McLaren drivers. And you might be thinking, what? £30 million a year for George, who's yet to win a title, who has less victories than Norris and Piastri? But you'd be thinking, £30 million, I mean, to me, that seems like that is a short-term little pay rise, that it's a little easier to justify that kind of pay packet if Russell may not be around for more than 2 years at most. Most likely, maybe, only 1. Because if the supposition were more around the level of Norris and Piastri, I'd be thinking, well, maybe this could be a 2+1. But yes, I think it's a deal that can stretch if the stars align, or if George really comes on song, or if someone else does not show up. Because that is the reality here. We've all suspected that Toto Wolff is not through with Max Verstappen, or maybe even Charles Leclerc, or maybe another top-end driver who may hypothetically barge their way into the Mercedes motorhome, hypothetically, and demand a seat with them. You know, should next year's W17 turn out to be sexy 3, yeah, because Mercedes really like the C3 tyre compound at the moment. Yeah, see what I mean? C3, sexy 3? Okay. That was too much of a stretch, sorry. I am really... But yeah, what Mercedes did right here, they told us one concrete thing and then left the rest of it a bit of a mystery. I mean, Toto did kind of say that when he would announce it, it would be very low-key, it wouldn't be a bombastic affair, it would be just getting it out of the way, and then that was that. But I'm sorry, Mercedes, with your vagary here and saying only one solid thing, as I've seen through many other publications, left more questions than it has answers. And it does seem very weird for a team like Mercedes, a very Germanic-coded team that relies on data and precision, just not really laying down the facts really that clearly. Instead, it actually reminds you of some kind of Silicon Valley startup or something like that. You know, giving vague promises and trusting the vibes, man. And then the continued beta test of the Antonelli-Russell partnership, disguised as the Grand Mercedes master plan. The only solid fact we got was that both drivers will be around next year, with no designated lead driver. Them discussing them being side by side as a pairing that has proved itself. Code for, this year's experiment worked, thank God, and I would say it did. Russell has thrived being the senior statesman of Mercedes, even if Ted Kravitz threw George under the bus recently to promote his book, with the nugget that he perhaps might have prepared the diatribe he held toward Max last year at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. I'm sorry, I mean, I am currently listening to Kravitz's book, and it is really interesting. It made me want to go and listen to Murray Walker's biography, unless I'm very much mistaken. It's a really good listen, by the way. And it just made me think that Ted's been getting a lot of flack from Verstappen fans and British bias and what have you. Is this some kind of means to say, come on guys, relax, I'm not British bias, here, watch me take George down a peg or two. Anyway, Mercedes' announcement, even if it's really bare bones and basic, it really does point to the regulation cycle change as the main crux of it. The word future, it only appears once, as a subheader for Kimi's section. And that really tells you all you need to know. It's the perfect Freudian slip. They are obsessed with the brand new reset, but they are really terrified of what comes after. Do these two drivers absolutely nail it and they can't have the pick of the rest of the litter? Does that mean that they're off limits? Or what happens if these two flop? Then, and the car flops. If they don't get it all together, then no one else will come, and then, oh no! And then the rest of the statement is just typical fluff. No talk of multi-year options, no through 2027, no fireworks. I mean, Toto's when not if line does calm rumours a bit, yet the Mercedes PR train really likes to avoid any phrase that ties them beyond the reset year. It's how you try and signal confidence for next season whilst keeping your chessboard open for the one after, once the pecking order has been made clear. So in short, I think Mercedes really want the best of both worlds. They want to have their cake and eat it. They are committed enough to George and Kimi to keep the experiment going, because I'm pretty sure that the results are exceeding expectations, given that this is Kimi's rookie year and he's been very much thrown in the deep end. And the idea of George Russell, I mean, on paper it looked like he was going up and up and up, and in practice, he definitely has. I think that George has been able to win quite a few fans towards his camp, and many of them have laughed right back off again thanks to Kravitz's revelation. Thanks, Ted. But I don't think Mercedes are totally committed to them. It does feel like this partnership is very much hanging by a thread, dependent on external factors. And if that turns out to be the case, this could be very, very enticing for any other hopeful that wishes to join Mercedes, because this is the first time I think Mercedes has had this opportunity to be able to freely court, because yes, Lewis Hamilton did provide the team much success, but he did keep the driver market on a very, very tight lead, as in, he was very much saying, back off, I want Valtteri. Once Nico left, Lewis had real quiet domination in that regard, because Nico was meant to stay through 2018, but then he shockingly retired, and after that, Hamilton's growing star power acted as some kind of shield for Bottas, as perhaps some countermove to the pain in the ass the Finnish driver experienced when having to suffer through annual kickings of the can with his contract. And yes, it must have been especially galling for Valtteri, and I wish him the best of luck over at Cadillac with hopefully a 2-year contract. Ooh, very, very fancy. And if there were situations where Toto maybe wanted to jettison Bottas, it was probably denied by the likes of Lewis, who said, I think he does everything I want him to do, and I think he doesn't deserve being sacked like that, so you are keeping him, Toto. And then Toto had no reason but to comply, because why on earth would you get rid of Lewis? He is a star. He is a draw. He is bringing you titles. He is giving you unprecedented dominance. You listen to him. Ah, but Lewis isn't there anymore, says Toto, and then he cackles, wearing a very, very stylish black turtleneck. And then it means the target is on the back of Russell and Antonelli. They don't have the star power of Lewis, and therefore it's really leaning into my theory that Toto really wants to exert total control after having to really work alongside Lewis and really having to listen to his own requests and desires, but that isn't there anymore. Wolff has the opportunity to dominate with an iron fist like Horner did at Red Bull Racing. No wonder Toto actually misses having Christian around. He's lacking that direct inspiration. So yeah, I do think that next year is open season, because in that Mercedes statement, 2027 is not spoken at all. That's been left to the outside world to discuss, the journalists, to enrich the official party line themselves, and that makes it, though, unofficial, and therefore Mercedes don't really have to pay it much discussion. But that silence, I think, will speak to many people within the Mercedes fold, even the junior programs. If you're Mercedes powered right now, your whole future depends on which name sits above the garage after 2026. As for the driver quotes themselves, Russell opens with him saying that he is really proud to be continuing our journey together, which continues the working partnership he's had ever since he was signed up to the Mercedes program nearly a decade ago. It means that he believes the group trusts him and he trusts the groups, and he hopes that continues to be the case. He then pivots to one of the largest regulation changes, and incredibly focused, which signals alignment with engineering goals and controlled ambition, with him closing on my strongest season to date. That is very much a performance anchor, and he's been saying that the entire year, and I don't think you need me to tell you that this year has very much indeed been the strongest year to date. I mean, it's easily the most amount of points he's been able to accrue in a season thus far. He's not that far off 250 with 6 rounds to go. He could easily blast past 300 come Abu Dhabi. As for Kimi, he leads with being super excited, then recasts rookie volatility as growth. He mentions that he's learnt so much, good and challenging moments, and stronger as a teammate. That's the sign that he has matured a lot. And I think he very much has. He has been very much through the school of hard knocks, being at Mercedes, that is currently sitting second in the constructors, and him being a rookie. He had a disastrous European leg where his place in Formula One was being brought into question, that he may be ejected from the team. But I'm really pleased to see that he has come back swinging, and that he has very much been eating his chicken stars. Honestly, I think the combination of Antonelli and Russell is a very solid one. Them together is a really good halo product for that junior team. It may sound incredibly stale, but it's validly so. And what Mercedes said is perfectly valid. Again, it is very beige, but, you know, you can't fault it. Except for 2 little things which makes me really want to scratch the foam a little bit. There seems to be something laying under the surface. It's like that little itch you can't quite quell. Firstly, the complete absence of turn signalling. Those multi-year things is unusual for a new era reveal, as they claim. Teams often say multi-year if they want to project a long runway. This to me feels more like some kind of helipad in comparison. The relevant party's ready for a quick getaway if the need arises, which might be enough to keep the fans of Mercedes and Russell happy for about 5 minutes, equally as short term. But then after that, as they start to read through the statement, it doesn't look nearly as reassuring as it was once thought to be. It's now like, oh great, we're going to be having these same conversations again in about 9 months' time or something. It's not over yet. It's not like what it was in 2023 when George got the 2-year deal and we're thinking, oh good, cool, we don't have to worry about that for a good long time. And secondly, George's entire piece never directly hints at him being the leader, even though most reporting paints him as to be as such, that he is the adult in the room. That soft pedal plus pairing language from the mainstay suggests that the team wants stability without the continuity displayed by other teams, and said one time by Christian Horner himself. I can't prove that for sure since, well, I wasn't in the room where it happened. I wasn't there to see the contracts being actually signed. I wish I could. But I think the stuff that we've been presented really points to that situation where they want that pairing to remain for a little bit longer, but they're not really that sure about whether it's going to be something they want to keep for long term, or it's something they might want to upgrade. And again, this is really, really different to the norm. Other teams like to say it loud and proud with their drivers to really project that feeling of value to all and sundry, to the sponsors in particular. You know, to have a situation where you have two drivers, they're announced that, hey, they got a new multi-year deal down. You think, oh, cool, good for them. And then you move on. Here now, I'm just getting the feeling of that one bit in The Simpsons where Homer and Marge are in bed, and then Marge is giving just one-word answers. Homer then just turns around every time he gets the answer and goes, okay. You see what I mean here? We think we're satisfied, but we're actually not. So what I think we're getting here is Toto will projecting confidence to the world, but not conviction. What we're getting instead is confidence theatre. The gestures of certainty without the actual substance, as in like, don't you worry, George and Kimi are going to be in the car for next year. Are they going to be in there for the year after that? What is not said is as loud as what is said. There is no mention of options, no status language, not even from Russell, who has every right to call himself a leader. There's no incentives, there's no commitments to testing in simulator, that particular being a bugbear about sponsor days. There are no clause hints, no reference to external market pressure, nothing. When you compare that to what James Vowles laid down to Carlos Sainz, we got the vibe from James that he very much allowed Carlos to be in the driver's seat. Literally, actually. And said like, look, Carlos, we want you here for a very long time, 2 years, and then after that, the ball is very much in your court. There was very much the terms being made absolutely clear, and we felt like, oh, okay. Well, then I can easily understand why Carlos did come there. After all, that it seemed like quite a fairly good deal. That he isn't tied down. If it doesn't work out, then Williams will bear no grudges to him, then moving on. It would be their fault for not providing Carlos the car, and then Alex could follow suit. It was very much a very clear picture, whereas Mercedes, they really like to use fog at the moment, which tells me that their plans for their driver lineup in the long term are not really that locked down yet. We think they are, we are meant to think that they are, but they are not. Yes, I know, it feels anticlimactic. It should do. It's been 2 months longer than Toto's usual unveiling of deals around the end of August, and what we did get was very small, even though we were told this. But if it was going to be low-key, it should have been information-packed so as to truly shed any ambiguity or doubt. Nope. We still have plenty of that. Again, it's like the can's been kicked down the road for just that little bit longer, so that means maybe Mercedes can try and then salvage second place in the Constructors as some kind of little badge of honour at the end of the ground effect era, which has really been a bad time for that team. And I really want to go back to that new era thing that they mentioned. When teams usually want to enter a new era, they also like to overemphasize on long-term rhetoric to calm investors and fans. But instead, Mercedes isn't thinking about any of that. They're not thinking long-term, they are thinking in the immediate short-term. Yes, of course, it does provide flexibility, but they're not thinking about long-term domination here. They're looking to see where the chips fall. It means that if the car under-delivers or over-delivers, they can then act accordingly. Or if a premium target becomes movable. This very much feels like this has been done to stop people talking about it because it's becoming a bit of a pain in the arse. Ironic, considering that Bottas described the situation from his own perspective. This was very much going, there, fine. George and Kimi are going to be in the car next year. You're happy? Now be quiet. You can point it towards it being fairly ideal for the drivers because it does give them a little bit of power to be able to move and choose teams should they wish to. If George is leading the championship and then goes on to win it and he wants to remain with Mercedes, believing in the long-term project as he says, then he has every bit of right to do so. Same goes for Kimi. Even though his deal, I think, is that little bit longer, if he proves to be a championship contender himself, or he actually is able to beat George, since it seems they are going to be getting equal status, since there may be a chance that Kimi really kicks on next year and gives George a little bit of a fright. You know, with the whole pairing rhetoric, there's no 1-2 dynamic there. Needless to say, I think both drivers could have a little bit more political heft going into next year, with Max especially saying that he's expecting Mercedes to be near the front, but that's for another time. But I do see many people saying that this is some kind of public bat signal to Max Verstappen, that there could be room for him next year. Considering that both Russell and Antonelli are managed by Mercedes as well, even if George is supposedly looking for a new management team outside of Mercedes, the team does control their destinies. And yes, I am going to sprinkle a little bit of cinnamon on all of this, but it very much seems like that Toto is very much saying that oh, the escape hatch is ready, come on in. If Max does shake loose, although I do think the odds of it are decreasing by the race, next year turns into musical thrones, and next year's silly season will be absolutely intense. Because Russell right now, he's simultaneously a cornerstone and a premium trade piece. If Kimi turns out to have a banger of a year, a Verstappen-shaped opening appears alongside of him. Yes, I'm having to get the cinnamon and cynicism out again, because I do think that we could get a Williams situation that, even if George does go on to win the title, it might not be the main guarantor to keep him at Brackley for the year after that. I mean, George would have plenty of political might and heft to be able to justify staying with it, and it makes me think that maybe there might be some clause that locks it in automatically. But we don't know any of those details yet. It's still really vague. The fog of Mercedes is really giving many Russell fans particularly the heebie-jeebies. And maybe that might be intentional, that this might be the swan song of Toto and George's relationship together, that Russell ends up with a world championship, and that is a really big pin to have in his lapel that could grant him access to any other team that he wants. Maybe to a team that really exceeds expectations. Aston could really be a good prospect in 2027 for him to be the leader, to replace Fernando Alonso if that car turns out to be good, which is what the Spaniard had said. If the AMR 26 turns out to be a banger, that'll be the last car for him, thank you very much. Gracias. The wording also talks straight to Russell. Deliver like a title contender next year and the hierarchy could harden around you. But outside factors do matter too, but if he were to falter, Mercedes reserves the right to chase the once-in-a-generation outlier. And history backs the potential powder keg. 2014, that gave us one of the big star moves of Fernando Alonso going to McLaren and Vettel going to Ferrari. So I think if 2026 were to hurl us a really shocking elite move, it's most likely going to be George Russell. Because there are talks about Charles Leclerc maybe having enough of Ferrari, or those rumours of Oscar Piastri maybe quitting if McLaren continue their papaya rules and Oscar seeks #1 status elsewhere. But that is a lot more dubious, and there is a lot of spanners of speculation going around the internet ether. Russell seems the most plausible now, especially with the wording that we got from Mercedes, that his future is not entirely secure. It can be, but it's not entirely. And there is that really awkward finale situation, that George and Kimi end up having a clean sweep. Mercedes wins the Constructors. George and Kimi are 1 and 2. And Verstappen is available. What does Toto do in that situation to try and save face? He is going to end up with one driver out on his bum, completely unjustifiably so. There will be much scorn and derision, but Toto, does he care about that? No, I don't think he does. He probably wants to overtake and surpass what Ferrari are able to do in Constructors' titles. He's thinking about the team and its glory. He doesn't really particularly mind if he treads on the toes of fans, if he's able to get Max, if he can. But I don't really think that's a guarantee. I once again don't see Max at Mercedes, because the amount of compromises he'd have to do to his own personality, I don't see Toto backing down in that argument. Not anymore. Not like he did with Lewis. And if that happens, history won't remember the 2026 pairing, as they call it. We'll remember that one time when Mercedes traded in on building a destiny for optionality and being opportunists. That's the quiet tragedy behind this PR calm. However, what is really relevant here is this choice of video, which YouTube and I think you'll really like, and I'll see you over there.